Right now, the president of the most powerful country on Earth is publicly talking about buying, or even taking by force, a piece of land most people couldn't find on a map a few years ago. That land is Greenland, the largest island on the planet, home to barely 56,000 people, and covered almost entirely by an ice sheet so massive it holds around 10% of all the fresh water on Earth. But long before it became a headline in today's geopolitics, Greenland already had one of the strangest, coldest, and most fascinating stories of any territory in the world. Today we're going to tell you that story. Before we continue, if you enjoy this kind of content, give the video a like and subscribe with the bell turned on so you never miss any of the journeys we have planned for you. Let's start with something that confuses almost everyone the first time they hear it. Greenland is, without question, one of the least green places on the entire planet. Roughly 80% of its territory is permanently covered by an ice sheet up to 2 miles thick in some areas, second in size only to Antarctica's. So why on earth would anyone name a frozen island Greenland? The most widely accepted explanation traces back to the Norse explorer Eric the Red, who around the year 985 led a group of Icelandic settlers to the island after being exiled from Iceland for killing a man in a dispute. According to the old Icelandic sagas, Eric deliberately chose the name Greenland as a marketing trick of sorts, reasoning that people would be far more willing to follow him to a place with an appealing name than to a place honestly described as a frozen wasteland. In a strange way, Greenland may have one of the oldest documented cases of real estate advertising in human history. Eric the Red settlers weren't the first humans to set foot on the island, though. Long before any European arrived, various Inuit and pre-Inuit groups had already been crossing over from what is today Canada for thousands of years, adapting to some of the harshest living conditions found anywhere on the planet. These early Arctic peoples developed extraordinary survival skills, hunting seals, whales, and caribou, building shelters capable of withstanding temperatures that regularly drop far below freezing, and passing down oral traditions that allowed their knowledge to survive across an environment with almost no margin for error. The ancestors of today's Greenlandic Inuit, known as the Thule people, arrived around 1,000 years ago and eventually became the dominant culture across the island, a culture that, in many ways, still defines Greenland's identity today. The Norse settlement founded by Eric the Red managed to survive for several centuries, establishing farms along the milder southern fjords, raising livestock, and even building churches, some of whose stone ruins can still be visited today. At its peak, this Norse colony is believed to have had a population of a few thousand people, trading walrus ivory and furs with Europe in exchange for timber, iron, and other goods the island itself could never produce. But sometime around the 15th century, this entire Norse settlement mysteriously vanished. Historians and archaeologists still debate the exact cause, but the most widely supported theories point to a combination of factors: a colder climate period known as the Little Ice Age, making farming increasingly difficult, the collapse of the European ivory trade as African ivory became more accessible, conflict or competition with expanding Inuit populations, and simple isolation as contact with the rest of Europe became rarer and rarer over the decades. Whatever the true cause, by the time European explorers returned to Greenland in significant numbers centuries later, the Norse settlements were nothing but ruins, a genuine, unsolved mystery of medieval history hiding in plain sight on one of the coldest coastlines on Earth. Denmark's modern claim to Greenland dates back to the 18th century, when Danish missionaries and traders re-established a permanent presence on the island, gradually expanding Danish colonial administration over the following 2 centuries. For most of that time, Greenland was treated as a strictly closed colony, with trade tightly controlled by the Danish crown and outside contact deliberately limited. It wasn't until 1953 that Greenland's status formally changed from colony to an equal part of the Kingdom of Denmark, and it took until 1979 for the island to gain home rule, its own local government with control over most domestic affairs, while Denmark retained authority over foreign policy, defense, and monetary matters. In 2009, Greenland's autonomy expanded even further through a self-government arrangement that gave Greenlanders control over their own natural resources and judicial system, along with the recognition of Greenlandic as the island's sole official language, a symbolic and practical milestone for Inuit cultural identity after centuries of Danish administration. Greenland's strategic importance to the rest of the world became dramatically clear during the Second World War. When Germany occupied Denmark in 1940, Greenland found itself suddenly cut off from its own colonial government, and the United States moved quickly to establish a presence on the island, both to prevent any German foothold in the North Atlantic and to secure access to a mineral that, at the time, few people had ever heard of: cryolite, a mineral crucial for aluminum production and, by extension, for wartime aircraft manufacturing. Greenland's cryolite mine at Ivitut turned out to be one of the only viable sources of this mineral in the world, making this remote, sparsely populated island quietly essential to the Allied war effort. That strategic importance never really went away once the war ended. It simply evolved. During the Cold War, Greenland's location made it a critical piece on the map for both the United States and NATO, sitting directly along the shortest flight path between the Soviet Union and North America over the Arctic. In 1951, the United States and Denmark signed a defense agreement allowing the U.S. to establish and maintain military bases on the island, and Thule Air Base, built in the far north of Greenland, became one of the most important early warning radar stations in the entire Western defense network, designed to detect incoming Soviet missiles or bombers crossing the polar region. Thule Air Base was also, quite literally, the site of one of the most dangerous nuclear accidents of the entire Cold War. In January 1968, a U.S. Air Force B-52 bomber carrying 4 nuclear weapons as part of Cold War Airborne Alert Program crashed on the sea ice near the base after an onboard fire forced the crew to eject. The impact and resulting fire caused conventional explosives inside the weapons to detonate, scattering radioactive material across the ice and into the sea. Cleanup crews from the U.S. and Denmark worked for months in brutal Arctic conditions to recover contaminated snow and debris, and to this day, questions remain about whether one of the 4 weapons was ever fully recovered, an unsettling footnote in Greenland's Cold War history that only became public knowledge decades later, once government documents were declassified. The incident caused a major political uproar in Denmark, since Danish law at the time officially prohibited nuclear weapons on Danish territory, a policy the United States had clearly been violating for years without public acknowledgement. Beyond the geopolitics and military history, Greenland's physical geography is, on its own, one of the most extreme and fascinating on the entire planet. The ice sheet covering most of the island isn't just an enormous frozen surface, it's a massive archive of the planet's climate history. Scientists have drilled ice cores from deep within the sheet containing tiny bubbles of ancient air, trapped for hundreds of thousands of years, allowing researchers to reconstruct, with remarkable precision, how Earth's atmosphere and temperature have shifted across ice ages and warm periods long before any human ever recorded weather data. Some of these ice cores have provided evidence stretching back well over 100,000 years, making Greenland's ice sheet one of the most valuable natural climate archives anywhere on Earth. That same ice sheet, however, has become the center of growing global concern in recent decades. Greenland's ice is melting at a pace that has accelerated dramatically since the turn of the century. And if the entire ice sheet were to melt completely, a scenario that would take many centuries, even under aggressive warming projections, global sea levels would rise by roughly 23 feet, enough to redraw the coastline of virtually every country on the planet. even the more modest melting currently occurring is already a measurable contributor to global sea level rise, and satellite monitoring has shown some of the island's glaciers retreating at rates that surprised even the scientists studying them. This has turned Greenland from a remote curiosity into one of the most closely watched places on Earth by climate researchers, with international scientific expeditions regularly setting up camp on the ice sheet itself to drill, measure, and monitor changes that have implications for coastlines thousands of miles away. This same melting ice, ironically, is also part of the reason Greenland has suddenly become so economically and geopolitically attractive. As the ice retreats, previously inaccessible mineral deposits are becoming easier to reach, and geological surveys suggest that Greenland may hold significant deposits of rare earth elements, the group of minerals essential for manufacturing smartphones, electric vehicle batteries, wind turbines, and advanced military technology. China currently dominates global rare earth production, and Western governments have grown increasingly anxious about that dependency, making Greenland's largely unexplored mineral potential a subject of intense international interest. Some estimates suggest the island could hold one of the largest untapped rare earth reserves outside of China, though actually extracting these resources in such an extreme environment, with almost no existing infrastructure, remains an enormous technical and financial challenge that has, so far, kept most of these deposits exactly where they've always been, buried under ice and rock. The retreating ice is also opening something else that has captured global attention: new shipping routes through the Arctic. For most of human history, the waters around Greenland and the wider Arctic Ocean were frozen solid for the vast majority of the year, making any regular shipping route through the region practically impossible. As sea ice continues to shrink, routes that could dramatically shorten shipping times between Asia, Europe, and North America are becoming increasingly viable for parts of the year, a development that both Russia and China have been closely tracking and investing in, and one that has added yet another layer of strategic significance to a region long considered a geopolitical afterthought. All of this helps explain why, in recent years, Greenland has repeatedly found itself the subject of political statements few people would have predicted a decade ago. Talk of the United States acquiring Greenland isn't entirely new. Historical records show that the U.S. actually made a formal offer to purchase Greenland from Denmark back in 1946 for a sum of $100 million in gold, an offer Denmark rejected outright. That nearly forgotten historical episode resurfaced dramatically when the idea was raised again publicly in recent years, generating diplomatic friction between Washington, Copenhagen, and the Greenlandic government itself, none of whom have shown any interest in a change of sovereignty that would be decided over their heads. Greenlandic officials have repeatedly and firmly stated that any decision about the island's political future belongs to its own people, not to foreign governments negotiating from thousands of miles away, a position consistent with the decades-long path toward greater self-governance the island has been walking since the mid-20th century. Life on the ground in Greenland, meanwhile, looks almost nothing like the geopolitical headlines might suggest. With a population of just around 56,000 people spread across a landmass roughly 3 times the size of Texas, Greenland is, by a wide margin, one of the most sparsely populated places on Earth. Most residents live in small coastal towns and settlements since the interior of the island is almost entirely covered by the ice sheet and essentially uninhabitable. Nuuk, the capital, is home to roughly a third of the island's entire population, and despite being one of the smallest capital cities in the world by population, it has modern infrastructure, including a recently expanded international airport intended to boost both tourism and international connectivity. Traditional Inuit culture remains deeply woven into everyday Greenlandic life, even alongside modern conveniences like smartphones and satellite internet. Dog sledding, once purely a means of transportation across the ice, remains a valued cultural practice and a growing tourist activity in many northern communities. Traditional foods like seal, whale, and fish continue to make up a significant part of the local diet, both for cultural reasons and simple practicality, since importing fresh produce to such a remote, harsh environment remains expensive and logistically difficult. Greenlandic, an Inuit language completely unrelated to Danish, is spoken as a first language by the majority of the population, and its official recognition in 2009 represented a significant moment of cultural affirmation after centuries during which Danish had dominated official and educational life on the island. Perhaps one of the strangest facts about daily life in Greenland involves its isolation even within itself. There are no roads connecting Greenland's towns and settlements to one another. The terrain, combined with the ice sheet and countless fjords, makes traditional road construction between most communities essentially impossible. Instead, travel between towns typically happens by small aircraft, helicopter, or boat, depending on the season and weather conditions, meaning that visiting a neighboring town just a short distance away as the crow flies can sometimes require an entire day of travel, or occasionally isn't possible at all during certain weather conditions. This creates a genuinely unique national reality, a single country whose own regions are, in a very literal sense, physically disconnected from one another. Greenland's fishing industry remains, by a wide margin, its most important economic sector, accounting for the vast majority of the island's export revenue, primarily through shrimp and halibut, caught in the cold, nutrient-rich waters surrounding the island. Tourism has grown steadily in recent years as well, with visitors drawn specifically by the extreme, otherworldly landscapes, massive icebergs calving from glaciers into the sea, the chance to witness the northern lights in one of the darkest, least light-polluted skies remaining on Earth, and increasingly, an interest in witnessing firsthand a landscape scientists warn may look dramatically different within just a few generations. Despite everything, Greenland continues to rely heavily on financial support from Denmark, which still provides a substantial annual subsidy covering a significant portion of the island's government budget. A relationship Greenlandic officials have described as complicated but, for now, practically necessary given the island's small population, extreme remoteness, and limited existing economic diversification. Any serious move toward full independence, an idea that has gained increasing traction in Greenlandic politics over recent decades, would require finding a way to replace that financial support, likely through exactly the kind of mineral resource development that has made the island so geopolitically interesting to outside powers in the first place, creating a genuinely complicated puzzle where the very resources that could fund Greenlandic independence are also the resources drawing intense foreign interest in controlling, or at least deeply influencing, the island's future. So here we are today, a windswept, mostly frozen island of just 56,000 people, sitting at the crossroads of climate science, Cold War history, indigenous cultural resilience, and 21st century resource competition, once again finding itself, quite unwillingly, at the center of a global conversation it never asked to be part of. From Eric the Red's marketing trick 1,000 years ago to a nearly forgotten Cold War nuclear accident buried under decades of ice and secrecy, to today's headlines about rare earth minerals and territorial ambitions, Greenland's story keeps proving one simple thing: even the coldest, most remote corners of the Earth are never truly separate from the rest of the world's history. If you made it this far, you now know the real story behind Greenland, far better than the vast majority of people who only hear its name in political headlines. If you enjoyed this video, leave us a like, subscribe with the bell turned on, and tell us in the comments what surprised you the most about this entire story. See you on the next journey.